Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babylon Irons match preview of myself and Mike. And I think we're pretty confident this week. Man City away, Mike, and we're going to get into maybe potentially how we could get some success, if there is any, and what our outcome could potentially be. Yep, it is the dreaded fixture I think every team probably looks out for every season, Man City away. And it's come at probably a bad time off the loss of Palace, maybe a little bit more pressure on West Ham with the survival bid. We think we'll probably be safe, but it just adds that little bit more pressure going into this Man City game. And now if you're Moyes, what do you do? Because we looked really tired against Palace. Do you rotate or do you try and get something from this game? What are your thoughts going into this, Mike?
So if we're talking from a Moyes perspective, I think we do what Moyes does. He sticks with Old Faithful and doesn't change a thing. I reckon we might see one or two players rotated. The fact that he took off Fornals and the fact he took off Emerson would say to me that Cresswell and Fornals starts. I don't see him doing anything other than playing Antonio again up front. I don't see that midfield changing at all. The wing, maybe one side changes, but I still don't see Cornet coming in. I see Ben Rama coming back in. Defence, the only change he's going to make is the one that he has to make, and that's because Zuma is out. So I think, as ever, mate, whenever we talk about potential changes, they're ones that are enforced rather than ones that are made in which to keep the team fresh.
Yeah, I mean, with that Kurt Zuma injury now, it looks like he's probably going to be out. He may feature before the end of the season, but it's probably unlikely. It may be that Moyes maybe prefers to keep him for Europe if we get to the final and just hold off there if we're already safe. But it looks like basically this match, I think most West Ham fans are saying we need to just rotate because we've got some massive games coming up. You know, we've got United on Sunday and then Brentford after that between our Europa semi-finals. So they're very much winnable games. You look at the City game, probably not a winnable game. And yeah, like you mentioned with that Zuma injury, it's probably just going to be an enforced change. But one thing I can see Moyes doing is going back to a back three. And that could just be not just for this game, but actually for everything. Because with the centre-backs we have available, is he going to trust Agard and say Ogbonna, Agard and Kera? I'm not so sure. But before we get into the kind of lineup and what we maybe want to see, let's look at the head-to-head for this season in the Premier League between the two teams. Just a slight difference.
Look at that. Just a little bit of a difference. Fighting it out.
Yeah. As you can see here, they've got just over double our points, 76 compared to 34. Obviously, the league position, they are now top of the league after they've overtaken Arsenal. Played one game less than us and, 24 wins compared to our 9. So it is a tough fixture. City have hit form at the right time for them. They are absolutely flying in every competition and they don't look like, they're really slowing down. I know they got through the Fulham test at the weekend and, they pretty much dominated the game, but had a little bit of a nervy moment going to 1-1. Could there be potential there for us to kind of play on that nerves and go there with, probably for the first time in a while, not much expectation or pressure on our side, and maybe it might help our performance. I don't know. I'm just trying to be positive here.
All right, I'm going to smash that positivity down. No chance. Man City are now in a role where it's going to take something colossal to happen for them to lose pretty much any game between now and the end of the year. And that's not because when I say colossal, I don't mean that I just think, look, the way I look at it now is that Man City are on such a roll and there's blood in the water and they can see the finish line. And now they will go into that robotic, keep going from first minute to last minute to win games. And they will find a way to win. And I don't see them dropping many points, if any, between now and the end of the year, because they're now in that phase and that frame of mind of it's now do or die time, and they've done it before, and they've now hit their stride. No, they probably will rotate because, Pep is brilliant at that rotation. But let's be honest, when he rotates, the players he can rotate in and out are just a class above most teams anyway. And whilst we may keep it tight, we may make it difficult for a bit, I think once a goal goes in from City, and let's be honest, we tend not to ever keep a clean sheet against City, so it's not too far out there to say we're going to concede. I think once that happens, they'll be like a dog with a bone, and they will not relent, and they will see out the game. And I think, as you say, if we go to a back three, one thing that we've seen all season is we really do struggle to create out of that system. And I know we've caused in the past couple of times under Moyes, actually, we have caused them a couple of issues in that back three, and we've looked really good, and we've actually been positive. We tried to attack them. I don't see us going with that frame of mind, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm struggling to see a positive in the sense of us going out there, playing well, and looking to win that game, or looking to at least. I think that the other thing is the minimum expectation, or the least that Moyes will want, will be that let's try not to lose. That kind of setup. That's what kind of worries me. If you go to City with that frame of mind, which often you have to in some ways because it is Man City, you're almost lost before you've even kicked the ball.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think what we need to do here and what we will take as a positive in the context of our season is goal difference at this point, because that could potentially be a point at the end of the season. And, our goal difference, other than Leicester, is so much better than the likes of Everton, Forest, Leeds. So that could be a point. If we can keep the scoreline down, that's probably a win in itself. And, like I mentioned, we can then go into the Man United game on Sunday with a bit more confidence, having potentially rotated a few of our better, more key assets. So it's going to be interesting. I do think Moyes will go to a back three. And I think, like you mentioned, he will go there to not lose the match, to try and get something. But I think notoriously, when we go to the Etihad, we don't really get smashed. I know I'm saying this now, and it's probably going to come back to bite me, but I can't actually remember the last time that they thumped us at their ground. There's been a few at ours at the London Stadium, but normally it's like a 2-1. I think they beat us 3-1, 1-0, and we actually beat them 2-1. Bloody hell, it's like 8 years ago now. But
yeah, that wasn't right about that one.
yeah. So I think it's right to do what Moyes is going to do in terms of setting up not to lose, because if we set up to try and win the match in the way we play, and the fatigue that we have and the personnel available, I can see it being a bigger scoreline. So I do kind of understand if Moyes does go to a back three. So let's potentially look at, if there was going to be some rotation, what that could kind of look like. Again, it's really difficult to tell, but obviously Fabianski in goal, a back three of Aguerd, Bonakera, and then Johnson coming in at right wing back instead of Kufau, Emerson out on the left. Then a midfield three of Rice, Downs, Lanzini, and Cornet and Ings up top if he wants to rest the likes of Paqueta, Souček, Antonio. So we've seen this formation in Europe, Mike. We've played that 5-2-1-2 quite a lot in the Conference League this season. It didn't work in the first leg away at Ghent. We tried it and it was horrific, but it did work in a few of the other games that we've played in Europe, Anderlecht away being one. A lot of the other times we've played this formation. So maybe that does have a slight advantage for us, because it's not like we've played a back four the whole season and we're going to just go to City to sit in. The players are somewhat familiar with playing that back five. So do you think that could potentially give us a little bit of hope going into that match and trying to keep the scoreline down, just because we're more familiar with that setup?
I think it will help us to keep it compact. I don't know whether it help us to keep the score down, because I think the problem that we have in that formation is our ball retention is awful. And against City, you can't really afford to consistently and constantly give the ball away. And if all we're going to do is play the kind of long ball game that we've seen in recent games, particularly against Palace, which was directionless. I don't really see any positives bar us at set pieces. Now, I guess that's an inroad against Man City, but they have in recent years actually improved in their proficiency at defending and attacking at set pieces. Because, so there is, maybe that is our inroad to try and get a goal or two, because again, in the counters, we found out in the very first game of the season, City set up in which to counter our counter attack, and they did brilliantly, because in the past season they'd actually struggled with us in managing that. We did very well in the counter against them, but in the home game also we saw they basically countered that. They found a way in which to work out how to play against it, which is kudos to Pep, that they recognise that they need to have a counter for our counter, which they did brilliantly in that game and obviously run out 2-0 easy winners in the end. So I look at it as being much the same, unfortunately. I think the most important thing, as you say, is we obviously have to try and get something out of it. 3 points would be, dream world, really. A point would be very, very positive for us, especially leading into the United game. But I just see City. I just don't see City relenting at the moment against anyone. Unfortunately, they're playing other teams that are around us in the league, which is great news for us because those teams have to play against City. And if City are going to be unrelenting between now and the end of the season and picking up maximum points, that does mean those teams around us, even if we were to lose our next 2 games and one of them wins a game, they've still got City to come, which then means, again, as I say, City are unrelenting. As long as we go and get a positive result in one of the final 2 games, we can rest completely happy, rest assured and confident that we are going to be in the Premier League for another year.
That's why I think I'm more leaning towards rotation for this game because, like you mentioned, Leeds actually go to Man City this weekend when we play United. So they have them coming up. And then I feel like United at home, I've said it, is the game where we can get something from that. I feel like we can win that. So Leeds going there. And like you mentioned, Everton also have to play Man City as well, albeit at home. But yeah, I really just think this is the time where our players need to rest. We need to rest our key players. The likes of Rice, Bowen have played absolutely unparalleled amount of minutes compared to the rest of the squad, those 2 in particular. So I think it's important we rotate because we've got so many games coming up. And one disadvantage we do have over the other teams around us is because we have that semi-final. We have 2 legs that we have to play between Brentford and then, if we're in a situation where we've not picked up any points in the Premier League when it comes to that second leg, we then have to try and motivate ourselves to play a massive game against Leeds at home with the second to last game of the season. So this one, I think, it's always going to be a difficult task. If this was, say, not between Europe and not at the stage of the season we're at, sure, we could go for it a little bit more. But I just think in terms of the quality they have anyway, it's going to be so difficult. So I think the main objective is just keep that goal difference down, which I know is not the most positive mind frame to go into a match, but we're talking about Man City here. We're not talking about a random team. Like, this is the most difficult away test for any team probably in the Premier League. So with all of that considered, Mike, I don't even want to do a score prediction, but how do you see the kind of pattern of play going? Do you think we will hold them off in the early stages, or do you think it will be kind of relentless City as we've spoken about?
I think City will be relentless anyway from the first minute to the last minute. I just don't think that they're going to do that. I think as ever, there's always that early sparring stage. Now, what could be interesting is if we come out positively from the out, that could maybe unsettle City for a little bit because I don't think they'll expect us to do that. So one of the weird things about this game is there's no reason why we shouldn't go for it or attempt to try and win it or kind of come out early and go for the game. If we go 1-0 down, then fine, go back to the other game plan. But no one expects us to win this game. There's actually no pressure whatsoever on us. Yeah. And if we lose it, we're in the same position as we are. Nothing changes apart from goal difference. So in some ways, there's never going to be a better time to have a kind of a throwaway game. There's no point doing a throwaway game where you don't even compete and lose. We might as well at least go for it for the first 20, 25 minutes. Tell the lads, just go for it. If we go 1-0 down, then we'll change. But if in that first 20, 25 minutes, we start to get some results, then they might not come into the game as quickly as we would anticipate. And we have a free hit here. If we lose this game, we don't change position. We're still in a very secure place, as providing obviously we don't get absolutely smashed, but we're in a good position. So why not, for the first 20, 25 minutes, tell those lads, go out there and be positive. I know it's Man City, but when you get the ball, look to attack them, look to find those spaces. I don't see why we shouldn't. Again, the Man United game at the weekend, maybe be a bit more pragmatic about it because that's a game when we're now on level terms in terms of games played as everyone else. So maybe, yeah, a bit more pragmatism maybe within that game makes sense. But this one, I think for the first 20, 25 minutes, just go out there and be positive. Let's try, and if we go for a back three, be positive with it. Keep three back. Ask one of those midfielders to sit, and then push players up. Put pressure on City in possession. We know City can play for a press, but also they can overplay it sometimes. So you can kind of catch them. And if we're positive and aggressive, then there's no reason why you can't put pressure on them. And it is a pressure game for them, regardless. Yeah. We know it's City, and we know they will rise to any occasion, as we've seen this season. And we're not going to be as stern a test as, say, like Bayern Munich were. Yeah. Obviously, they dispatched them fairly well over two legs. But, we're in a place where we can't lose, really. Even if we lose the game, what do we lose? We're in the same position as we were, still with a fairly positive goal difference. So why not? That should be the message to the players. Have no fear. Try and play.
I think there's also a slight risk for City that they get a little bit complacent, because we've seen that, especially in their most recent home games. I think they played Leicester at home recently, absolutely blitzed them for about 15, 20 minutes, went 3-0 up, and then took their foot off the gas. Leicester scored a goal. It made it a little bit nervy, and they got back into the game, and they actually had chances to probably equalise in that match. So there's that element. There is also a case for Moyes that's going to go there and try and be a little bit more compact with rotation. And then maybe we get to half time still in the game, either 1 goal down or still 0-0. Then we can look to bring on some players that we potentially rested and maybe give it a bit more of a go. But yeah, I can see the argument for both, whether going it from the start. One thing I'm a little bit worried about with that is that we concede a couple goals early, and that then knocks our confidence.
What's the difference? Look against Palace. We did pretty much nothing of anything and conceded a couple of goals. Well, we scored 1 goal early. I think that's only the first time in the Premier League we've scored one in the second time in the third time because of Bournemouth, that we scored a goal in the opening 15 minutes. So we start terribly every game because we just sit and wait for the opposition. So why not go for it? Look, if we go 2-0 down, it's 2-0 down against City. We're probably going to lose 2-0 anyway. Let's at least try and have a bit of fight, because if we just turn up and sit there, they're just going to pull us apart and run us ragged. And the problem is the players are already knackered as it is. And I know we keep saying rotation. We know there's not going to be no rotation. We know it's going to be that midfield three. We know that back line is going to be the back line. It's not going to change. Even if it goes to a 3, you maybe will see the addition of Kehrer, or he may still play Cresswell, but move him into the inside left and put. And then it's a case of, does he go with for Emerson in maybe a more natural? I still think he's okay as a left back, but he has moments in a more natural position, or does he go completely ballsy and go, right, Cornet, I'm going to put you there because you're going to have a lot of attacking intent, and you also can give me more of a goal threat from that position. It's Moyes, and I don't see that level of, for lack of a better term, imagination.
I think it is a tough game, because regardless of how he sets up, it's going to be tough for us. But I think the main thing is, if we do go to a back 3, which I think we probably will and should for this game, it's important, like you mentioned, we don't just sit in and hoof the ball back to them and just keep recycling, because I feel like that's why we get so fatigued, to be honest. Like you see other teams that are also fatigued, but it's just because, playing football, you are so much more tired when you don't have the ball and you're running compared to when you do have the ball. It's just like a psychological thing. And, being moved around, reacting to what the opposition do is so draining, not just physically, but mentally, because you're always having to try and be switched on. When you have the ball, you have that, freedom, you have the creative side. You don't feel the fatigue as much. So I feel like that's also what's played a part, and why we're again seeing fatigue at this stage of the season, even though our squad's a little bit bigger. And
lack of rotation. Like, I think it was based on the last month and then the players and the minutes they've played. I think someone like Lanzini, for instance, who can do a job for us, played 61 minutes.
I I think that's the thing. I don't mind consistency with the lineups because it's helped us get some pretty good results in the league. But there were times in the Conference League where we should have rotated when we could have a bit more, and especially it's also in Premier League games at home where we could have rotated. And there's players that are good enough to come
quicker,
in,
isn't it? As well, Frankie. Like the amount of times we see subs in the 70th, 80th minute.
Yeah,
like, with 2-3-0 up, make a sub in the 60th. It might change the dynamic of the game slightly, but again, just make a sub sooner. Sometimes if the game looks won and you're confident the game is won, that's the problem. I don't think Moyes is ever confident the game is won until it's in the final 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. He's then bemoaning players that when come on, don't make an impact, or they're not showing enough in games. It's like, because you're not giving them time in which to get minutes into their legs to feel a game. In 5 minutes, again, I said it all season. He thinks goals can be scored in moments. There's no real things are done by design. The only thing that's done by design are set pieces, because most otherwise it's in little moments. There's no points really working on pattern to play. It's about working on nullifying that opposition and then talking around, well, these are some of the weak points. Let's try and attack them. But I don't think there's really any development on the pattern to play. And if there is, please someone highlight them to me, because this year there's hardly been any. And most of it in recent games has been kick chase football. Get everyone behind the ball, boot it up top, let Antonio run after it, see if he can do something. Everyone try and get up with him. The occasional times we play it on the floor, but by and large, especially that Palace game, it was kick chase football. Once again, isolated centre forward. And you can tell there's no pattern to play, because when he goes to 2 men up front and he brings on Danny Ings, or when he plays Danny Ings, it's the same football. There's no change in play. A smart manager changes the play dependent on the personnel. We don't do that. We play the same crap.
Yeah, I think going into this game, there's one thing hoping for a win, but I think what Moyes will be doing is hoping for a miracle, because this is going to be an absolute test for regardless of how we set up. So hopefully,
if we win, I'll take it back. I'll praise Moyes. If we win and it's because we've done tactically brilliant and we have,
give him the contract.
100%, I will praise him. Just after the Palace game, which I obviously had quite a large rant about with Sloth. Again, it's just, but I never bought into this. He's turned the tide and things have changed very much, because quite frankly, in between that, we were playing League One and Championship teams, and everyone's buzzing about how brilliant we've been. And it's like, sorry, but beating teams in Europa Conference, whilst it's a competition, I've said all the way through, we need to take it properly and need to respect it as a competition.
Yeah,
let's be honest. The level we're playing, we're League One and Championship, and I'm not going to be jumping up and down, singing from the from the highs how brilliant those performances are in terms of look at what we beat, look at those scorelines. It's like, yeah, but we should be getting those scorelines. We should be beating those teams. There's a reason why Fiorentina are one of the highest scores, because they are a good team in Serie A, smashing teams a division or two below them. Same with us. It's like you should be smashing those teams, getting those scorelines, having leading goal scorers. It's not necessarily praiseworthy in the sense of winning those games and playing those games well. It's praiseworthy as you win the competition, because quite frankly, you should be, as a top tier, top 5 European team, should be smashing those the other teams around Europe. And that maybe it sounds a bit disrespectful, but to be honest, the wealth of talent in those teams, you should be. And it's arguably, you could say it's embarrassing if you're not.
So, I think with Moyes in the Premier League, before we wrap this up, it's just the lack of consistency. I think that's what's let him down. Whenever we have won a game, it's been, we've beat Southampton and then, lost to Newcastle and then won against Fulham and, picked up a decent result against Arsenal and won at Bournemouth, and now we've lost at Palace. There's been that lack of consistency all season.
And also, look at that pattern as well. Like you mentioned, so played against Southampton. We weren't necessarily that great, but we scored a good set piece. Set pieces all of a sudden working. Game against Fulham, we were absolutely awful. We defended well in about the final third, our final third. Didn't play well because we defended resolutely, but they could still get played for us. We were terrible. That was an own goal. The next, when we beat Bournemouth, granted, we played well in that game. We blitzed them in the first 20 odd minutes, but also they were profligate. They missed chances all over the shop as well. So that could have been a high scoring game. It wasn't as if we were absolutely smashing them. Arsenal was probably the one game where that was a real team performance, and one where that felt like those players puffed out their chest and went, no, we can't go down like this. And yeah, I think some of it I feel is actually the players have stepped up in certain games, which is why this performance has been so good. Others, I think it's just that they have like the Fulham game, for instance, and the Southampton game. I wouldn't say they were great performances. They were results, positive results, but I don't say that was because tactically we were brilliant or superior. Against Bournemouth and Arsenal, I think there are two games where the players really stepped up, and there was some good tactical things within there. But I also put that largely down to those players actually standing up. So I just see inconsistencies. And like I say, the Newcastle game, we were tactically inept and the players were all over the fucking shop. I don't think anyone knew what was going on in that game. And then against Palace, we were absolutely knackered. But again, that shouldn't be an excuse, because if the managers turn around saying the players are tired and they couldn't get around the pitch, well, that's your fault.
Yeah,
you've overplayed them, overused them, and you haven't rotated. So,
well, we're going to see. We're going to see what happens in this City game. It's going to be tough. We'll see if he rotates, and yeah, I guess in our review, it'll be less a tactical review, maybe more looking at kind of the player rating side.
Maybe 5 minutes ago, well done, City, enjoy the title.
Maybe we should just analyze it from a Man City perspective and just say how good they are. It might make it a little bit more enjoyable. But
yeah, I think I'm just going to sit there and watch the game. I'm not going to try not to get too frustrated. I don't think that's possible, because West Ham fan, you always want West Ham to win. So I think, there's going to be frustrations, because obviously you want West Ham to win, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think there's no reason why sometimes you can't sit there and acknowledge when an opponent has outplayed you. And I did say that against Palace, even totally outplayed us, and at times they were a joy to watch. So I've got no problems in sometimes just enjoying another team, even if it still pains me because it's us getting on the end of it. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're not going to do score predictions this week because it could be heavy. But
I'll say 2-0. I'll tell you what, I'll put my neck out there. I'll say 2-0 City.
I'll say 1-1. Go on, I'll put my neck out even there, even further. But
that's brave. I like it.
I know. We are hoping for a miracle. I think even a draw would be a miracle. So hopefully we can just put on a good performance with a little bit of rotation, and then take that confidence into the Man United game on Sunday. But yeah, that's going to be all for today. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And Mike, one thing left to say.
Come on, you ones.